Hello, Renee. It's so nice to
Hi,
see you.
Mary. Good
And
to see you too.
thanks. We're going to chat about your article in Butterfly Living about trusting God and waiting on Him through struggles, which I think is such an important topic. And so let's jump in and tell us in 2012, you said you experienced something new that
hmm
really rattled you. Could you share what happened and how it impacted you?
Sure. Well, up until that time, I had never experienced anything physical that was connected to anxiety or a stress reaction. So when I experienced what I did, it was really shocking. I had been stung by an insect in my home, and um, my first thought was, what if I'm allergic to this sting? And so then I started thinking about it, and those thoughts kind of spiraled into me starting to feel like I was having an allergic reaction, heart racing, tingling in my hands, and just all these things that I thought could be a sign of an allergic reaction. And I think what the fear really gripped me because I was alone with my daughters, my young daughters at the time. My husband was traveling for work, so he wasn't anywhere near. And I suddenly thought to myself, what would I do? What if something happened to me? What if I passed out in the house and the girls were here alone? And so, long story short, I put them all in the car. We went to the urgent care, and they didn't really know what was going on. But at the end of the day, they decided that it might have been an allergic reaction. So they sent me home with prednisone, and that was that. But then 2 days later, when I was telling a friend kind of over chat what had happened, everything started up again in my body. And I thought, oh, I'm having a reaction to the medication they gave me. So it got worse. I called my neighbor. So she called 911, and I was back in emergency. And this doctor was funny because she ran all kinds of tests and then kind of came back in quietly and said, have you ever had a panic attack? And I just, no, didn't even think there was any chance that it was a mental health issue or it had anything to do with anxiety.
So you were
So,
shocked. You were
um,
shocked by
you
that.
know, from that moment, yes, I was totally shocked because up until that point, I was running our life super smooth. I was doing lots of things that people would consider to be, you know, stress inducers, and so I just did it. Even I couldn't fathom that anxiety could like take my body down physically. So I didn't really want to accept what she had to say.
Yeah, that I think that's pretty common. You think, oh no, it's this my thoughts could not be leading this. Anxiety could not be leading this. You made an important statement in the article. You say you were an overachiever who took pride in being recognized for your fortitude. So this identity marker, I think a lot of us have. I know I usually think I can handle this, especially as moms. We got this.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this issue that you started facing and accepting, how did that impact that thought about yourself going forward after that challenge you faced in 2012?
Well, it definitely challenged me to see what it was that I was relying on for most of my life, and that was just myself and relying on my own abilities, on my own problem-solving skills. And even though, was a Christian for a long time and prayed about things, I wasn't really putting anything in God's hands, and I was keeping it all in my own control. And so, having to face, a diagnosis of generalized anxiety, because those symptoms spiraled into kind of a chronic situation. So I did have to end up going on medication for that. But it was a literal like my body will not do what I want it to do, thus I don't have control anymore.
Wow.
So at first it was, yeah, at first it was like, the foundation of my life was gone because I always relied on myself. And a lot of people trusted me and I was given a lot of responsibility because I could always handle it. So it was really hard to suddenly come to a place where I couldn't know for sure if I could handle something and how I might react. So yes, it was a huge shift.
I bet. And I mean, waiting on the Lord in through anxiety, through any challenge we face can be difficult. It
Yes.
does require, as you said, we have to surrender. We have to trust him And then we have to shift reliance off of ourselves
Mhm.
onto Him. Um, how did you handle that? Surrender and trust.
Well, I think the first thing that the Lord really started to show me in this process was the fact that I had put a lot of expectations on what His answers would be because of they were the things that I would want the answers to be. So, for example, in the situation with the anxiety kind of spiraling out of control and becoming an everyday thing that I had to deal with. Um, my answer, if I was going to pray about it, was that God would take it away somehow, whether it was through my supplements or my diet or, doing all kinds of things that should reduce the stress in my life. I thought, okay, Lord, if you're going to answer my prayer, then, you can heal me, you can make this go away. And I didn't entertain the thought that God would allow it and maybe even use it for my good and His glory. But that's why His ways are not our ways. And so that surrender was okay. I surrender my expectations because your ways are not my ways. And so when I give this to you and trust that you are hearing me and going to respond for my good and for your glory, it could look like whatever God has in mind. And so that was huge for me, a huge shift.
That is huge. And really, our next question, talking about finding peace in the middle of anxiety, I think it ties into what you just said, where you have to say, use it for your glory instead
Yeah.
of trying to fix ourselves
Hmm.
through everything, through whatever we're struggling. Um, saying, okay, God, be with me as I go through this. So, what
Yes.
have you done? So, it sounds like you're managing your anxiety
Hmm.
with a lot of different methods. What have you done to find peace as you walk through this particular storm in your life?
Well, definitely one thing that has always connected me to the Lord and His presence and kind of quieted my spirit is being in nature. Ever since I was a little girl, I would go to summer camp, and that would just be my time where I would feel like God saw me and I could hear from Him without the noise of the world. And so I went through a second kind of bout with the anxiety coming every day. And during that time, I just was encouraged by someone to go outside and just, walk it off. And what I found when I went outside is I was reminded of those experiences of my childhood where I could see everything God had made and I could just listen to the sounds of nature and really get away from the stresses that were in my house and on my laptop and on my phone and just allow the Lord to restore my peace. And so at first, that was just kind of a survival mode situation. But I really started to, for one thing, I started to appreciate even my own neighborhood. I live in Colorado, but I don't live in the mountains in a cute little mountain town, but I live out in, south of Denver. But we have beautiful views out here. And I discovered for the first time after living here for many years that I could walk within less than a mile to see views of Pikes Peak and the Front Range Mountains and just be in awe of all that God made. I just find that being with him in his creation reminds me of, the fact that he is constant, he is faithful. The things that he makes are beautiful, and I can trust him with whatever I left at home. He knows what it is. I can give it to him, release that stress and that frustration, and just know that he's going to help me take care of it. So that's brought a lot of peace.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think, not everyone has a view of Pikes Peak, which sounds beautiful. They can do what you do and you pivot, right? You
Yeah.
get out of one environment and whatever is available to you,
Hmm.
pivot to a different environment. And if you can get outside,
Hmm.
be more in touch with God and the sky and the trees and whatever surrounds you, I think it really shifts your mind.
Hmm.
So that is beautiful. And I know you talk about that on your blog and on
Yes.
Instagram. How can people find you? Where can they connect?
Well, for sure, they can start with my website, which is reneegotcher.com. And there I have launching points to a lot of things that I'm a part of. But I'm most active with my Pace of Grace blog on Instagram. And that Instagram handle is the Pace of Grace underscore Renee Gotcher. And I like to share tips on, getting outside with the Lord and making time for it, taking time to really meditate on the transforming truths of Scripture, because that was a big part of what I would do on the walks, is just really meditate on a truth about the Lord that would provide that peace that I needed for the day. And so that's where I share a lot of that. And then I also write devotions on crossmap.com. I contribute about once a month there. So I hope to hear from some of your community on some of these spots, as well as your website.
Well, thank you. And you're also a contributor on Life Changing Stories, which is available
Good.
on Amazon, a book we collaborated on, so you can read her story there. Thank you so much for being here today. And if you
Thanks,
want to read
Mary.
her article, head on over to butterflyliving.org. Thank you.